Hello everybody, I'm Screxio, your critical thinking DJ. Today, the track that we are going to listen is Slavoj Zizek, a book of Igor Pelgreffi. This book. I think that this book is unique in its way of analyzing the Slovenian philosopher because it doesn't approach one argument of the philosopher, but how the philosopher approach one argument. Now we go in medias res in the book, and I will read some passage, some little piece of the books. I don't think that you can find it in English, so maybe this can be very useful for you. Our time is global fragmentary, and our world is nothing else than the shape of the time. Our bodies lives suspended between the big sphere and the point, between the hyperrelation and the loneliness. Everybody feels that the global fragmentary is to a structure of historic, material, and economic, which influence us a lot in the deep. And so, how we can think a real alternative to the model of life of capitalism? This is the question that arises. So, in general terms, which are today the condition of possibility of a critique of ideology? What means critique of ideology? Means start every time with a question which the subject is the word. Why the things stay like they stay now, like they are now? Why they think are like they are now? This is an important question. And Zizek, for Igor Pelgreffi, this book, have some spatial orientation. The central axis of the thinking of Zizek are Marx with the critique of ideology, Lacan with the problem of the subject and the symbolic order, and Hegel with the contradictions. These are the axes X, Y, and Z of a system of Cartesian refinement which define what is the logical space of the Zizek discourse. The fourth dimension, so these are the axes, but the fourth dimension is the one of the style. The style is the heart of the strategic philosophy of Zizek. The truth of his style is in the speed and how the lines goes one after the other, very speed and with a filmic montage, with cuts between a sequence and the other. But the moment of think is in the blanks, in the whites, in the moment that between a line and another you think. There is that is the space of thinking. And is not the single content is important, but the interconnection between the contents. What is important is the structure of the substitution, the cutting and direction, like shape of right, of the interchangeability and of association, of traduction of assets of idea in different assets, till the traduction of a whole system of meaning in another system of meaning. Marx in Lacan, for example, or Lacan in Hollywood films is another example. So there is a first label that is how we write, with provocation, prose, and this thing. There is a second label, is how the lines are put together, and then there is a third level that is the corpus, the body, the textual body of what he writes, with a overproduction of writing that form this strange body that goes in different direction and reflect the thinking in different direction. The style of Zizek derives from these three levels that are syncretic united. The ideology itself is double, is the visible of the phenomena, like the active form of imagination, and is the invisible of the deep down historic structure. This impure quality is what makes us take the ideology in its moment concrete and dynamic, in his auto division, where becomes visible the intrinsic antagonism which the explicit formulation of ideology can permit itself or recognize. In the sublime object of ideology, Zizek make a definite point of this theoretic transition fundamental, which is that of subject, object, ideology. The subject is empty, an emptiness of its symbolic structure, which in part makes it what it is. His identitary form consists in his auto deferment inside the significant chain. The object is something that goes to the surface in the psyche when the subject fails in the process of digestion of the real that can't put in terms of symbolization, like the trauma, passion, or like the drive. From the beginning, the sublime object is already split in two. And so we can see from the beginning this ambiguous state of the sublimic object. the sublime object, is an object that there is and there isn't. There is present, is an object with its presence and with absence. The object, like the oggettività di Lacan, is a residual, is what remains, a resistance. But is is too what it misses, like the object of desire, and like in the late Lacan, the enjoyment. Is a representation, but which concrete make his game in the subject and in the structure. So, at the end, the subject is for his nature haunting by his ghost. Subject and object are in dialectical form, and they are that for touching between them there is the ghost. But the ghost is already in the realm of ideology. The man can go away with the ideology, but every time the philosopher make an orientation for the action, like we can go without ideology. But the image of escaping the prison of ideology is maybe the our ideologic fantasy fundamental, because the ideology is an illusion that structure our real and effective social interaction. Zizek come back various times on the theme of the philosophy, the feel for the philosophy, or that is the retroactive imaging, like is a supplement for a loss. For him, every theoretician has failed another profession, and this failment sign like the cow with the ch all his body, all his being. For Zizek is the filmmaker, but for everybody something else, so think about this. The real, what is the real? The real is like the base of a building, but is a dynamic base, and there is a continuing relation. In itself, the real is a resistance and doesn't have essence. The impossibility of a real is not unchangeable. It has a relation with the time, and its shape, its form can change. The real, like impossible, is not the idea of divinity or something ulterior things. Then there is the subject. The subject is an emptiness, is a monkey in the symbolic structure, and is always something else from what it is. The subject is to a concrete singularity, a preverbal body, and a drive to a status opaca. In this moment the term of resistance, so the, the negativity, comes to us like a lost stratification of our subjectivity. The imaginary cover the function of the third level. It is the sublimation of the real in image, where it can cover the ideology. This is the state of the mirror. The ego, so the subject, born from an image that he sees in the mirror, that for him is coherent, but it isn't. We follow all the life this image of unity, but it doesn't exist in, because it is imaginary. Zizek rehabilitates the real and the subject, but without refuse the refinement of the imaginary. The imaginary is always radicated in the real and in the subject, and in a certain way it proceeds. But we always have to make the imaginary goes with the feet on the ground and make him again in the real and in the subject. For Zizek, the self-consciousness is always an error, a mistake, a collateral damage. Is like a treat in the being. Self-awareness is not something that can make us stay better in the life, because it comes from an error, un passo falso, is the negative of a resistance. The notion of the sguardo, and together with this, the all things that we can take from the reflection about the cinema, the movies, and on the arts is very important in a perspective of critique of ideology, because lo sguardo is the structure, the essential structure of the fantasy. Lo sguardo, in this sense, we have to make lo sguardo under analysis for the deconstruction of the logic that is bipolar, and that the lo sguardo incorporates in it without knowledge it. A critique of ideology that takes the problem of lo sguardo and the virtual reality that today are very central in our lives, and on a level of economic, financial, global, can't go away without thinking before the structural quality of the cyberspace. The cyberspace is always a double. Is a way or to put away the trauma, or it is a way to meet the trauma. We, all of us, live in a closed reality, in a tautologic reality that is autoreferential, like the virtual reality or the everyday reality, massified and without a lot of life or dance. Between the lines of this alienation can born the need of a reconnection with the real, but this need can assume a very violent mood. So we have the spectrality of the cinema, then we have lo sguardo, then we have the virtual reality, and then we arrive to the dose of violent resistance, which Zizek say that a little part is necessary for the subject to break the ideologic labyrinth. In the political space, Zizek first examines analytically all the position, all the losing position, and they how to make them in the wrong side. And for exclusion, it goes to the crucial point. There is only to take action in the domain, in the structure of the political economy. And the central question is the question of Lenin. What we have to do? Che fare? With a position very clear in terms of politics. We must to risk. We must to risk ourselves. He repeats with obsession. We must risk even if we seem like old romantic, courageous being that in our world of today seems very old. We must take a certain philosophical madness and we must accept the absence of some terms. For what you risk all? For what do you want to risk all? This is the question. And the mood of irony that characterizes Zizek found a point of stop in the problem of the autonomy of the subject. And he rehabilitates all categories like honor and courage. For Zizek, the, the first thing to do is to continue the analysis. He rehabilitates the theory like praxis. And we have to search in the deep of the global scenario, and we have to make pressure in specific point, very little specific point, where the structure is going down in the capitalistic financial structure. That this point we must read on the register of a socio-economic and historic. For example, the concept of the worker, operaio, is now very in crisis, irreversible crisis. But this doesn't have to make us stop thinking. at the concept of the class. For example, a social class of the disemployed that maybe can figure new scheme of the old concept of the working class. But I don't think to an apology of the jobless generation. The flexibility that is in the work of millions of people is a mutation. Is a is a mutation that the workers doesn't have decide. It comes from the capitalistic system, a disidentification. But this permits to put the work on a base level that is always more indispensable for the productive system. This can be the point, the new necessity that doesn't make the fruitification total. This is so arrest what remains of the social industrial complex. Zero level can maybe play a fundamental role. He has a, a truth that we see before in the global conflict. Our real is the capital. Nobody authorizes us to act in a revolutionary mood against the real. Only us can authorize us, like Lenin did and said. Something can real happen if we act on the relation, on the subtle relation that make notes in the imaginary, on the modality of reactivation of my enjoyment. Generally, the work on the symbolic structure. In the last analysis, what Zizek point, we need a new style, a new posture of the body, how the body, a new mood of how the body stay in the space and times, which is suspended between the global and the fragmentary, our lives today. Thank you for your attention.